Welcome to another episode of VGXL. I'm your host Daniel, aka Games. With me again today we have Jose and Dakota, aka Adocat and El Torrente. And joining us today we have a special guest, an old friend and rival of ours. Should we say your first and last name?
No, my first name is okay.
And it's social.
Okay, so we have our friend. We have
Mike said
Mike,
my last
aka
name. They might look me up.
They're gonna find out how famous I am.
These people might look me up.
We have Mike, aka Micalus, joining us today. As some of you already know, you've probably heard that name get thrown around here on the podcast. And so we decided last week, if you listened to our last episode, we discussed that we should, he was the fighter of the group, the one who had the spoiled kid who had all the cool video games. And it's no reason I even had a history in video games because of my friend Mike here.
Thank you for having me on.
For sure. How you
Of course,
doing, Mike?
Mike's a low key,
What?
friend circle legend.
Yeah.
He's like our legend. We talk about Mike a lot on this podcast, actually.
That's true.
It was like I was becoming a myth.
Right?
No one see me.
The man, the myth, the legend. The rumors
Sometimes
are
I
true.
question,
He
like,
does
was Mike real? Do I know it? Because I got memories of him.
exist. Right? Yo, you brought up, I forgot to bring this up to Mike, but Jose mentioned, do you remember when you got Resident Evil 2? Mike, do you happen to remember the day
Yes,
you got
Mike,
Resident
tell
Evil
us.
2?
I got it for Christmas. Man, 1990 something. I remember
Resident
my
Evil
brother
2?
got it. Resident Evil 2, yeah. I think my brother, he got it for me, and he brought it to Pennsylvania because that's where we were spending Christmas, and he wanted to take it back with him back to the house, even though it was my Christmas gift, because he was like, all right, you could play it when you get back home. And oh man, I was like, but
Oh,
it's my
wait a
gift.
second. Okay, so does this make sense? Mike, you tell me if I'm losing my fucking mind here. I remember us. I brought this up on one of the podcasts, right? I remember
that was the last
us
one.
going to graduation, and I remember everybody with their cap and gown walking along Broadway thinking we're so cool. I
Mhm.
went into Cyber Games, and I saw you in there with your mom, and you were in a cap and gown, and I could were you purchasing a second copy of Resident Evil 2 because your brother kept it?
No.
What did you buy?
I don't remember what I bought. I don't even remember.
I remember it being Resident Evil 2. I clearly remember that.
No, I don't remember. I remember. I recall,
Listen,
unless it was.
let me
unless
tell
it
you
was-
what you got for Christmas in 1998, all right?
Unless it was Resident Evil Director's Cut that my brother got for me, instead of Resident Evil 2. Then I don't know.
Okay,
'Cause you
okay,
did have
because I
Director's Cut,
swear
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a memory like me. Like my memories become super vivid. I just never forgot that because I remember being like, "Oh, I'm surprised." I thought you had it already. So I remember being like, "I thought Mike had like you must have played it somewhere or something." I remember you having that in your hand and being like, telling the guy what you wanted, telling Danny like, "Yeah, Resident Evil 2," and me being like, "Oh shit, cool." I don't even remember
No,
what I
because
got that day.
1998.
Cool.
It was Resident Evil. I just Wikipedia'd it. So Resident Evil 2 was released in 1998. So we graduated in 8th grade around that time. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
Resident Evil 2. But I don't recall buying a second copy.
Well, no, I mean,
No,
I'm
but-
saying I don't know. I could have sworn that's what it was. I could be wrong though, man.
But you're right, because you did have Director's Cut before 2. So maybe you probably got Director's Cut for Christmas, because I remember you definitely had Director's Cut. And then maybe it was after that or something, and then you probably saw them. But this is all old memories. I just thought I'd bring it up because we talked about that last week, on the last podcast.
Yeah.
So, but
No, dude. I mean, I truly hope I'm not going crazy because that was a vivid memory for me. I remember being like, "Yo, that's like he's gonna have a good time because it's a fucking dope game." It's just so
Well,
crazy.
Yeah,
shout out
we
to
can
shout out
agree
to
that it was
Cyber
a Resident
Game.
Evil.
Again,
Yeah.
So this week we're gonna do something a little bit different. Normally we cover the news and some news stories, but since the last episode was a little bit delayed and there's been the news kind of has already calmed down. We're gonna kind of skip the news a little bit today. check out your local blogs if you're curious, because I'm sure none of you are relying on us for the news. But we'll return back to format next week. Um, we'll return back to format next week to go over our thoughts on other stuff here. So like last week we got real deep into horror games and talked about, so that's how Resident Evil came up, and that was some of the stuff that we that's why we're discussing it right now. But this week we decided to go with fighting games, and we decided, like we previously mentioned, we were big in the arcades, going to the arcades back in those days, around the Upper West Side, going to 97th Street in Amsterdam, going to Laser Comics. I'll never forget seeing freaking X-Men versus Street Fighter for the first time at a Laser Comics. So we decided, and then like I said, Mike always had the cool fighting games like Tekken and Bloody Roar. So we wanted to do a little deep dive on that this week. I want to give a quick shout out to the Idiot Ezra podcast. Ezra's around our way, so I know you. Thank you for listening. You from the block. So if there's anybody who actually enjoys those little references, I know you and Marv will probably appreciate that the most. Were you saying something, Jose?
Man. Listen, I was just saying, like, the Idiot Ezra podcast. Shout out to Ezra and Marv, man, because I don't even know if they recall, like, if they know that I'm that same person from back then, because you barely see my face on this shit. But back then, like, everybody knew each other in Douglas, especially if you were a gamer, because anybody who's younger than us listening to this podcast, like, you had to really go to the streets to play certain shit. Like, there was no home console edition sucked for the most part. Like, if you got an arcade perfect translation of any fighting game, it was like that shit was fire. That's why Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for Dreamcast is still considered like such a banger. You know what I'm saying? Because they got it pretty close. But all those dudes from the block were mad cool, man. He even mentioned James on the podcast, which is crazy because James is like my OG. Me and my cousin Mario, who Ezra also knows. James is who taught, like we were already playing arcades, but James was like the Daigo of Douglas. You know what I'm saying? Like, people knew that James was that dude. If James got on the joystick, you were done for the night. Like, there was no.
Yeah,
I remember seeing him. Yeah, I remember seeing him front on a dude. Like, this is a real story from 97th Street. He acted like he did something special, but he really didn't. But it was fire. He defeated this guy as Reptile in Mortal Kombat 2 in the Armory stage. And in that stage, there was a glitch that if you did Reptile's fatality, the floor began to move without the person moving. It's just the floor moving. So he made it look like Reptile's fatality's back down low punch. He started pressing mad buttons and like doing crazy shit with the joystick and threw back down low punch in there to make it look like it was some crazy combination. And then he got his head eaten and the floor starts moving. And the guy's like, yo, how'd you do that? I never seen that shit before. This shit's crazy. So that's the type of dude. He was just completely nasty at video games. Like, any fighting game, it did not matter. He was fucking great at it. And that's who we like were watching. We wanted to be as nice as James. And he just kind of always stood around as like the arcade legend of Douglas. So that was pretty cool to hear them mention that. Yeah, man. Shout out Ezra and Marv, man. Good dudes.
Yeah, seriously, thank you. Like I said, they've been mentioning us a bit on that podcast. So, again, shout out to the Idiot Ezra podcast. They talk about sports, but they do my favorite show, which is the Freedom Friday show, where they talk about video games as well as other forms of entertainment, like shows that they watch, stuff like that. So, definitely check that out. But yeah, so honestly, like I remember. So we go back when it comes to fighting games. I remember I was punished. As I always was at home, and probably forgetting like a bad report card or some stupid shit, and I remember my I always like saw the fighting games but never really cared about that, you just button mashed them or whatever. I remember hearing the Hadouken. I swear I used to think where you were saying toolkit toolkit, and I was like, what the hell is
Toolkit.
toolkit? I never used to understand what the hell he was saying. And I remember I was just like, it was like, I don't know if it was my birthday. Yeah, it was getting close to my birthday. So, my father didn't want me to be like punished on my birthday. And I remember in his drawer he had Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition, which was only on Genesis because that was like whatever Turbo Hyper
Ooh, I
Fighting
remember
was.
that, man.
Yeah, was
Just
on
that
Super
box,
Nintendo.
bro. That artwork on that box
Yeah, where
got
with
you
Guile
fucking
falling
hype.
back or whatnot, and this guy and Bison I think was on it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
I remember he
Bison.
whipped that out. I had never played Street Fighter other than button mashing until that point, and I'll never forget when I finally got to open it and play it. It felt crazy. Like I really enjoyed the shit out of that game. And I think a lot of people's first character was what's his name, Guile, because it was just back for 2 seconds, forward, and then he to do his Sonic Boom, and then everybody it was like to do like down to forward looked like crazy. I was like, how do I fucking do a fireball? Like I can never play with
I
play with fucking the other guys.
I
What was
think
that?
my first my first Street Fighter character was Blanca, because all you had to do is just tap the punch button just to do the electrical move,
Oh
and I was like,
yeah,
that's it. you know.
I went for Ryu. I
yeah.
remember that
I was such trash.
because I mean, yeah, it was my first time playing a Street Fighter game. Wasn't even around Douglas. It was actually some shitty convenience store um, near Beach 67th Street in Queens, where I was living at the time as a kid, going to school. Before I started living in Douglas full time, and it was actually Street Fighter One. It was the first Street Fighter, and it was terrible. Like I
Yeah.
remember being complete shit at it, and then when I saw Street Fighter again, the next time I saw Street Fighter again was Street Fighter Two, next to Mortal Kombat at Burger Plus on 102nd Street in Broadway. Um,
Shout out to Burger
listen,
Plus.
our area. Shout out to Burger Plus, bro, because Burger Plus, that's a place. That shit is like a figment of. It feels like it's a figment of my imagination, because
I
the
think the
only
only
dudes I
reason
know
why I
for a
believe it,
fact.
the only reason I believe that place exists is because you brought that up out of nowhere one day. Like, yeah, they had that at Burger Plus. I was like, you knew about Burger Plus? That was like years ago. I was like, because that was like you said, such a distant memory. I'm like, I remember playing NBA Jam in that place. That's all I remember, and having a burger. I don't even, I don't even remember if it was any good.
Yo, listen. Yeah, yeah. It was a dope spot. They would always have two arcade machines. I remember them having Mortal Kombat One, Mortal Kombat One, Street Fighter Two, and then one day out of nowhere, the shit was insanely packed. And I'm walking by there with Mario and our parents, and we just dipped in real quick, and it was Mortal Kombat Two. They had just brought it, and you gotta understand, back in those days, I'm like, we were young, so we weren't exactly going to the arcades on 42nd Street as much as we'd like. We'd sneak off, we'd do the typical stuff as kids and like end up there, but we couldn't be there like the older kids all the time, like just 7-8 hours, like just at Broadway City or all those other arcades that were downtown at the time. So when Mortal Kombat came uptown, everybody, the older guys who were like 6-7 years older than us, who were fucking on there all day, they had already played this shit downtown. They knew fatalities. To us, brand new, because a month had passed, and a month in arcade, when arcade is that hot, a month is like 6 months. You know what I'm saying? So everybody,
Yeah.
it was like, it felt like we missed out on so much, but it was still new. When it hit the hood and it was in Burger Plus, it was packed. People doing all sorts of crazy shit. They brought babalities and friendships. Like I had no idea what I was looking at. I remember the first character I saw was Johnny Cage and being like, "What the fuck is this? This looks completely different," but it was dope. But Burger Plus, that's right up the block from you, right down the block from you, Mike. Yeah, that was like
Yeah,
right. If you
Do you
kept
remember
going,
Burger
like
Plus?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, I mean we're in the same age group. Like we're all pretty much the same age, so that makes sense. Did you ever go in there, Mike?
I don't recall going inside. I just passed it, and I didn't even know that it had arcades.
Hmm.
You know,
So
but
when's the first time you touched an arcade for the first? Like when was your first hands-on experience?
I think it was after in junior high school. There was a church on 96th Street, Holy Name, and right across the street from it was an arcade. I think it was just one, but it might have been two. But I remember specifically X-Men versus Street Fighter, and I don't know if there was a arcade before it that they swapped out, but I remember X-Men versus Street Fighter, and
They had Alpha there.
they had Alpha there. Then
Yeah.
maybe we played that as well, but because you and we were both in Holy Name Catholic school, so but I just remember X-Men versus Street Fighter. But anyway, so yeah, it was that spot where I really got on arcade. Then, as Dan mentioned, laser comics, and then I started working in cyber games. But cyber games wasn't really arcades; it was just like consoles that you put your card in. But yeah, it was cool, back then and stuff.
What's your favorite fighting game, Adocata? Because I know you love fighting games.
No, ladies and gentlemen, take a look.
Adocat's just there waiting to jump in. Where's your Ryu bandana, bro?
Nah, man.
You didn't bring it this week.
This reason right here is why I don't play fighting games. You see this fanaticism? This will turn any newcomer off when they're trying to get into it, and all you do is bust their ass every single time. That'll make sure you never touch another fighting game.
In the arcade, you always the person who had next, they just put their quarter on the
screen.
Arcade, and like that's my quarter, even though it didn't have no name on it. It was like, all right,
Yo, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was talking to my wife Pfeffer about that I'm like, yo, there's nothing like the hood back in the day. Nobody ever disrespected. Nobody ever disrespected the quarter on the thing. It was like you counted 4. I'm like, all right, I got next right here, and you kept your eye. You knew exactly where your quarter was. Nobody ever tried to skip. Like that must have been one of the most the almost unwritten rule, but that was followed to the. I mean, I never experienced that, and I'm talking about. You remember how Laser Comics got? That shit used to be packed with because they have 4 to 5 fighting games. And you would have like 4 or 5
It was a big
quarters
place for what it was.
Huh?
Yeah. And
what you say, Jose?
I was saying it was a big place. I was saying it was a big place for what it was. Like it was spacious.
Exactly.
It held like 5 arcades easily.
And we used to pack in there.
That rule is still kind of followed at like pool halls and stuff, with the pool table. You put your quarters down. For the most part, people won't fuck with it. I mean, now they have like chalkboards sometimes, but if it's like
yeah, but it was amazing because it was among
it's kind
kids,
of like
what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, kids never, us being kids from the hood, nobody ever disrespected the quarters. Like, that shit is just, that's one of my fondest memories of like that era. Like, that it's just like, yo, you could really be waiting there. Like, yo, and people would ask, like, if you wanted, like, yo, who's this? Like, there'd be one quarter there and nobody was taking or going. They'd be like, yo, whose quarter is that? So
organized gaming.
So those were
before Toxic.
So those were your guys' like very first arcade games in total, like ever?
Well, if we're going by first arcade games, I'm like fighting games. Probably, like before the because I never played them in the arcade until after I got it for Sega Genesis, and then once I learned, I'll never forget. I finally I hurt my thumb so bad because I was determined one day. I was just tired of using the Chung-Li's, the Blankas, the E Hondas, and or doing Sonic Booms. So it's like I wanted to learn how to do like a Hadouken, like play with the real the famous characters. And when I finally, it wasn't until I finally mastered like the quarter circle, punch button or whatever, that's when I got like really, and that's when I like fell in love with it. I was like, yo, I could do a Hadouken, I could do a hurricane kick, like, yo. And then once I learned how to do the what is it, the dragon punch, the Shoryuken or whatever, that's when I saw a machine, I was jumping on that machine.
Yeah.
But first arcades, we're talking about like X-Men, the 6 freaking joystick X-Men game is probably like one of the earliest like arcade memories, and the Simpsons and RoboCop are probably like some of the earliest games I played, and Teenage Mutant Turtles too.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles, Simpsons.
Oh yeah, and Alien vs Predator game. And stuff like that.
Hell yeah.
I think it was Super Mario Bros. For me. I played it like in my Super's basement on Burnside. I think he had it.
Oh yeah.
Super Mario Bros. Down there for some reason. Yeah.
As an arcade?
Like the.
Yeah, it was like.
Oh, you mean like the old school Mario game where you just hit
it
him
was
from
like
under?
yeah, exactly. The POW and all that shit.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Mario,
that was
wow.
like
yeah,
7 or 8,
that was
yeah.
before the Super, which is Mario Bros. That
Yeah.
you know what? That might be one of the more first ones because I remember we went to Puerto Rico back in the day and it was some like beachfront, but it was like crap. But they for some reason they had like a little arcade to the side. It was like Miss Pac-Man and the Mario game. And I remember we used to, if you banged hard enough on the Miss Pac-Man, it would trigger a quarter, like 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 a credit. And I was 7, so that might have
Nice.
been one of the first. Like, well, I think I played in probably Coney Island.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, you played Bison though, because I did play Street Fighter. Like I do fuck with fighting games from time to time, but like Bison was my guy. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but-
because
As a starter, nah, I never really touched him.
No?
Like down the line, then yeah, I messed with him, but yeah, not as
Yeah,
a
like-
starter.
I was never really a Bison guy until my cousin Mario. Fucking Bison boss, bro. Like, mad annoying with that character. And I just said,
yeah.
now I gotta pick him up because I want to be able to fuck with him too. Because
Yeah,
me
that
and
was
him, when it
fire,
comes to fighting games, me and Mario are super fucking competitive, and it just will never end. Like when we were on the arcade, it was different because we'd go like, I'd play one and beat somebody, then he'd jump on and beat the next guy. We'd swap out like that and just fuck people up. But when it came to when fighting games started going to home consoles, that's when me and him used to like really bust each other's ass, and we did toward the end of the arcade era too. It's kind of like what they were saying over, Ezra was saying, like it's something about being on an arcade and feeling that heat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
Like there's something about
standing
like
up.
you-
Yeah.
taking it back to what you said about putting those quarters on the screen. You don't know, like let's just get into the science of this shit real quick, because there were so many times where a guy would come that you never saw. There would be people that nobody really fucked with that we didn't see. Maybe they were visiting from another borough and they saw an arcade. They're like, fuck it, I'm gonna jump on. But these were cats that I'd never seen before. This would happen every few months where I'd see a guy I never saw jump on and be fucking nasty. Or they would just come in. That was the term. You mind if I come in? That was how you ask somebody. There was like a structure to it, like that's how you ask somebody if it was okay to play against them. Yo, you mind if I come in? And the person would be like, oh yeah. Or they'd be like, oh nah man, I'm trying to, like, I'm real close to Goro, like I'm trying to beat him. And sometimes you'd respect that and be like, all right, cool, and you let him get his ass whooped by the arcade, and then you jump on after, right? Or somebody would just disrespect you and be like, nah, fuck that, and they put the quarters in anyway because they're like that, and that was a real beef. That was a real.
You guys said this was a respectful place. What the
No,
hell?
this is the other side of it though, because this is
Yeah.
real. This is for real. Like, and anybody who was a part of that era will be able to back me on that. There were multiple times where people would be like, "Yo, you mind if I come in?" No, go ahead. And they put the quarters in, bust his ass, and you don't even look at them. There was no GG, no good game. The person is just there fucking with the joystick, looking directly at the screen while the other guy walks off.
Yeah.
That was arcade. Like
I've
the
definitely seen that before.
like the shit you see in esports. It's like an evolved version of that, is what I feel like.
Yeah, I think the respect really came from when two people were already fighting and someone else wanted to come in. But if you're playing by yourself, then it's like, okay, do I really want to wait for you to beat the game, or do I just want to like play and go or whatever? I think that's when the impatience starts setting in. Like, I'm not gonna let you play by yourself.
It's
bro.
Like there were times where you'd catch one guy, probably James in our case, on that arcade for fucking hours, and nobody could take him off. And then somebody, he finally got him off. That shit's crazy. He fucked him up. That's wild. And then everybody would be fighting against that guy. So there were moments where if you saw who was on the stick, you're not even gonna you're gonna be like, I'm gonna be here for mad long. You just walk off because you only got an hour. Your mom wants you home at like 9 p.m. and it's like 7:40. This dude ain't get it off no time soon. So this is real scenarios. Like that's how it was.
Yeah.
And nothing was more crazy than if you had a win streak against people that you would actually get the crowd, just amping up the, like, and it's like, oh man, it's so exciting, adrenaline rush. You know?
You literally bringing me to my next point, because I was literally about to say that, because my lifetime achievement. You know how in Married with Children, the Al Bundy's achievement in his life is his 4 touchdowns he got, in his high school football game. Yo, I'll never forget. It was my sister's 316. This is like how the story starts. It was like it was right across the street from the 97th Street Arcade. There's that little room. I don't know if y'all grew up around there. You know the Daffy Duck that's been on that corner with the twirling legs. If you've been, anybody from that block knows
Holy
exactly what
shit.
I'm talking about. The Daffy Duck with
Where they used to throw baby showers in that little room.
Exactly.
Sounds weird as hell.
Yes, there's a balcony there, and for years there was a Daffy Duck on it for the wind or whatever. But anyway, and right there's that little room.
I remember the legs.
Yeah, they were setting up. So I was like, I'm gonna go play some Street Fighter. Yo, I put probably like 50 cents at the time. So I put like 50. I was literally there for 2 hours whipping everybody's ass on that block. I could not believe it. Like everybody, and until I got the crowd, and they're like, "Yo, what?" And then they were talking mad shit. They were like, "Nah, he keeps backing up." So I was like, "I'm backing up. I'm not backing up." So I would go freaking. I started rushing everybody who came to me, whipping everybody's ass, and I think it was James, because I'll never forget, was that guy that always kicked everyone's ass. He was like, "I'm gonna get him off the machine. Don't worry." He comes in and fucking whips my. I was so mad. 26 wins, bro. 26 wins on that shit. And I saw his face.
He had a tattoo on his arm. 26 wins.
Yo.
And he fucking.
You like Dr. Disrespect.
So mad.
That's funny. That's wild though. 26.
No, that's amazing, bro.
Like those are from real
honestly,
26 because it records the wins against people. So yo, all these dudes I was whipping air, and I'm not that like some air juggler or none. It's just every scrub from the block that day decided to just come fight me.
Decided to play that day.
Yo, it was I took they were
on the block.
Yo. But yeah, so yeah,
yes,
well, yeah,
26 wins, bro. That's a legendary move, honestly.
I think you do need that tattoo, bro.
Right? Just 26.
Honestly, I would get some shit like that tattoo just because it's a memory to me.
26.
Yeah, right?
You know
what does that mean? Like, it was a
tired.
cold day in January.
Oh, you weren't there.
I was 13 years old.
You wouldn't understand.
No, I was 12. Because if it was my
go.
sister's sweet 16, that means I was still 12. I was 12 years old, whipping everybody's ass from the block that day.
Wow.
Yo.
Bro,
fire.
And I think I beat the game for the first time that day
there
too.
was like
my bad. Go on.
Nice.
No, I was just gonna say that Mike bringing up that point and you bringing up the point of like what the arcades were like back then and getting that crowd. That crowd. This is the reason why I feel early Evo tournaments have so many legendary moments, because it was that crowd of people who were building that shit. You know what I'm saying? Evo back then was like those dudes. And I mean, a lot of those dudes are still involved, but it was kind of like we were just coming out of the console. We were just jumping into the fighters only on console era. You know, like at that point, it's like a moment where it was kind of on its way out. So you had a lot of those people trying to fill that void. Like that's what that is. These guys coming with their arcade sticks, sitting in front of a crowd of bloodthirsty fucking fighting game fans. That's trying to, like, you know, in a way that's trying to breathe life into that arcade feel. Because you can have an Evo in a fucking VFW hall where it holds 500 people, or you can have it at like Barclays Center. Yo, the reaction is always going to be sick. You know what I'm saying? Like fighting game, like if you have the right people against each other.
That classic video.
Yeah,
I hope tournaments never go online. Like it's just not the same. You know, the fact that these people have to travel from wherever they are in the world to attend these tournaments and then have that crowd, I think is, it's just something I don't want to see go away.
Shang Tsung couldn't do Mortal Kombat over a Zoom call. Shang Tsung made your ass come to Outworld for that shit.
Exactly.
But
yeah,
going back to what your point, though, I really want to say real quick that classic, Evo with the where he does the parries.
Yeah,
that was Street Fighter 3.
Oh, yeah, he parries
Diego.
Yeah. So that video is only as good as it is, besides the fact that he accomplished some wild shit because of that fucking crowd reaction. That's what makes that video fucking like, like, yo, that video wouldn't be, you watch that shit muted, it's like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? It's the crowd, it's that
you know what, you want to hear something crazy?
Yeah, fucking.
You want to hear something fucking nuts? think about, since we're discussing what our neighborhoods were like and the arcades around the way, think about how many times some shit like that happened in the hood that we just never heard about because it was just on the street. Like, yo, you saw what he did?
Yeah.
This motherfucker, he blocked everything, yo. This shit is crazy. Like, those are the types of dudes, like, I loved it, man. I loved
You
everything
had to
about
be
that
there.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
happening right now.
I loved it because it was just, you had older guys, you had younger people, you had people who were really like just all about the game. Nobody discriminated. Like, you went to the arcade. I've seen going back to that thing with the quarters on the screen. Me and Mario had one situation when we were kids where an older person tried to take our quarters. Like, I had 2 quarters on the screen and he tried to take it. And you know what the older guys did? This is Macho. You know Macho from Douglas. Everybody, I think with the exception of Dave, we all know Macho. Macho's father and his friends robbed him
Oh shit.
because they took our quarters. They were like, nah, now you're giving us all your money. And they started running his pockets and they gave us like $3 each. Like, yo, here, take that. Fuck this dude.
Nice.
And they kicked them out of Burger Plus. So like you had like funny style moments where shit like this happened. Maybe I'll just we'll just edit out whose father that is. Let's give that a bleep because I'm not snitching.
Right? Like,
I'm not.
okay.
This was 25 years ago, but I'm not trying to
Mr.
get nobody in
Torrente,
trouble. All right?
We have a murder from.
Listen, no, listen. We know this. If you know that story, you listen. You know who you are, buddy. Appreciate
I
it.
thought we robbed that guy.
But yeah, we'll beep that. We'll bleep that out. But yeah, I mean, it was community. There was a lot of people. Talking about areas in the neighborhood. Do you guys remember the pizzeria on 99th?
Yeah, that's where I played RoboCop. It was right around the corner from 163. I don't know about Mike. Probably didn't see that too much because he went to the other school, 145. So
Yeah.
I remember because of 163.
Okay, so you were more toward the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up right there on 100th Street, so that was a spot that, like, if I wanted pizza, like, that's where I was going, and it was a good pizzeria. But you went there and they had Ninja Turtles. They had Ninja Turtles. They had the X-Men, the arcade game. Yeah, they had a bunch of cool shit. I remember just being like, man, this is awesome. And then more spots started popping around. Like, you couldn't even go into, like, there were regular stores who had arcades out here. Like, I remember a grocery store at 107th in Columbus. You went all the way to the back. It had an arcade machine, and they had Mortal Kombat 3 there. It was like that. It's kind of like when you used to see the little fake casino machines in stores. You remember those?
Yeah.
Yo, in the back, them illegal machines. Yo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
It's
that.
like-
I
it
used
was
to
like
always
that.
wonder. Some random Spanish person would win, and they'd be like, "Yeah," they'd come out with a wad of cash. Like, what the fuck? I never even understood that shit back in then, and then realized that shit was mad illegal. Having a fucking slot machine in the back. Oh man.
Yeah, I thought that shit was regular.
Where?
They still have those in like some Dominican shops. They got those.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that
Yeah.
shit in
Yeah.
25 years easy.
Really?
Yeah. Not around here.
Oh, wow.
Not in.
Nearby spot I go like in Queens for work. Yeah, spot in Queens I go near for work. When I go around there for lunch, they got like 2 slot machines in the back.
Oh no shit! Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, man. They're still out there.
But I think we talk about arcades and the good old days. Best 3D fighter, go AutoCAD.
That are alive.
That are alive.
That are like, all right, that's
I like
fun.
boobs. Yeah, you know,
I like
boobs
boobs.
are good.
I mean,
Juggle,
it's Soul Calibur.
jiggle animation.
Yeah, man. Ahead of their time.
Talk about juggle combos, right?
Yeah, I mean,
But
so what would you say is the best 3D fighter?
Me, it's Tekken. Tekken
Really?
will always be my favorite 3D fighter. I don't care.
Wait,
you
hold
don't
on.
say.
You like Tekken?
Yes, I do.
You sure?
I mean,
You sure
listen,
you don't like
anybody who's
Virtua
listening
Fighter?
doesn't know.
No. Oh, actually, I Virtual Fighter. I was gonna bring this up. Do you remember junior high school, Noel?
Yes.
That's who I was trying to tell you last week.
Yeah.
Remember, I was like the kid. He was related to Fran, and he had a Saturn.
That was the
that
first
his
time
name.
I played a Saturn, and it was Virtual Fighter, and
Yeah.
I just grabbed that controller, and I was like, Sega Saturn controller. I didn't like it, but yeah, Virtual Fighter. But yeah, it's not Virtual Fighter. That's not my favorite fighting game.
You know what's funny? Noel, I actually just maybe 2 years ago, Noel was on my Facebook and like we talked a lot,
Really?
like a lot. Because I've known Noel since fourth grade.
That's
He
Oh,
went
okay.
to PS75, and I knew him before I knew you guys. And then we went into junior high, and I think he left the school. He
Yeah, because he
left at
came
some
in like
point.
7th grade, right? I feel like it was 7th grade.
Yeah,
he showed
he
up
did
out of
something.
nowhere.
He left and came back or something. And then like through high school, I never really talked to him. But then we found each other on Facebook, and it was like, oh, it's one of those things where you're just cool forever. Like you're just one of those people that's just naturally cool.
Did I tell you how I saw him 2 years ago though? Do you remember how I saw him?
No, tell me.
He was a troublemaker. He was a troublemaker in middle school. He was like the only kid who cut school and did weird. Always got in trouble, right? I work in hospitals. I'm all over the city, and I happen to be waiting on on my contact in the ER of some hospital uptown, and I'm looking at this dude. I'm like, he looks mad familiar. And he keeps looking over at me, and he's like, "Yo, I know you, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, he was like, "Yeah, no, well." I was like, "Oh shit!" He was arrested for getting into a fight that night. I guess the night before, and he's like fucking talking shit to the cop, and the girl's like, "Stop fucking." There's a female cop, like she's like, "Stop fucking talking." And he's like, "Yeah," and then he starts explaining the story to me. He's all loud, like, "Yeah, man, I was just there. I was just trying to break up a fight. I don't know why they arrested me, man." I was like, "Of course, I haven't seen you in like 20 years. You was a troublemaker, and then I see you arrested, and you're only in the hospital because you got hurt during the fight." And then he's like, "Yo, you got a cigarette? Can I get a cigarette?" I was like, one of those like bummy ass moments. I was like, this is what you've become. And I'm
Well,
like,
You gotta be doing
I
a
don't
lot of
know
snitching
about that.
tonight, man.
What was that?
You gotta doing a lot of snitching tonight. Just saying.
A lot of
I'm
snitching.
just saying it was just a weird situation to see like this
Yeah.
kid 20 years later, arrested
Yeah.
in a hospital.
Well,
That is
the,
super random.
So
The
did you
first
give him
time-
a cigarette or not? That's what. The people
Oh
wanna
yeah,
hear.
I hooked them
Oh,
up.
word, did you hook him up?
The
Shit.
hospital, I had to ask the cop, "Is it okay?" Because I turned to the cop. I was like, she's like, "Yeah, go ahead, just one." And I gave him
Thank
one.
you.
Come on.
Thank you.
One
Podcast over. That's what we came here for. Good night, everybody.
But we caught up a
God
little bit.
bless
It was
y'all.
cool
Have a good
talking to him.
While he was in custody.
well,
Yeah.
I
I just want to say full. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I haven't seen him since junior high school, but I remember he invited us. It was a group of us. Maybe you went, Dan, but we went to his house, and
I
he
didn't. I
wound
remember
up
this,
getting
though.
in trouble with his mom because he didn't want to share the controller, and his mom passed by, and then she just like, "Oh, you need to share, whatever," and he got in trouble in front of it was a few of us from junior high. I think maybe Gio was there and some other people, but we were like, oh shit, like, or whatever. But yeah, we basically got to play the game because I think he was hogging the controller. And anyway, but yeah, it was cool.
Classic
Virtual
Noel.
Fighter nights, and then we wound up leaving, and then after that, I didn't know what happened to him. He just like disappeared from junior high, and then that was it. But yeah,
I didn't
anyway.
play X-Men versus Street Fighter. I thought he had X-Men versus Street Fighter.
Oh yeah. I don't know. It was a long time ago, but I remember Virtual Fighter and Nights. Those
Because
are the only
I didn't
two.
go to that, and I remember being jealous because he always mentioned that he had a Saturn, and like none of us believed him. And then he was like, "No, he really does have one."
Yeah.
And then I think he had the RAM cart and everything for X-Men versus, because you needed, because PS1 could not handle switching characters unless it was the same characters.
Mhm.
So I remember being so jealous because I was like, yo, I wanted to play at home and not worry about quarters. It was like a dream. And then the only way to play on PS1 is like you had to be the same freaking characters, which was corny as hell. But yeah, yeah. But going
yeah.
back, yeah, go ahead.
But with Tekken, yeah, King is my favorite character. Always main him, and I really got into Tekken because of one of our junior high school friends, Mike C, and we would just battle each other. He picked Julia, like as good. I mean, I'm not tournament good, but as good as I am, he was the one to beat. like, he was just like my rival. Even in like Street Fighter games and X-Men versus Street Fighter and stuff, he would with those Street Fighter games, he would, when he did his like Shinku Hadouken, it was that like long blast. He would just run his hands over the controller, and then he would just do the elbow drop.
Yeah.
And I was like, this son of a bitch. Like,
Talk
I'm
about
gonna get
yo.
him next time.
Yo,
He was she
yo,
was a clown and
listen.
a showboater and a half,
Yeah.
and he would always
And
losing to him sucked because he'd make fun of you.
like
yeah.
right to just be that dude.
He was your Sasuke.
Yeah,
Bro, he was
Yeah.
like that with everything though. Like even
Yeah.
in school, this fucking guy was good at everything, and we used to play tag. And whenever
Oh.
Michael, like whenever he was
Oh,
in,
yeah.
whenever Michael C was it was over. We were all getting caught, and we were not catching him. Like if
Yeah.
it was freeze tag,
Yeah,
he was
break
the
your
only one
neck.
left in the yard running along the gate. Bro, he was
jumped
the
up
way.
in
Like
the
he
air and
jumped
changed
into place, and then
Yo,
Mike
he
Mike
was
was
the guy to beat. And then I think if if things didn't go bad for him, maybe he would still be my rival. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd
Just
like to
in
think
real
that
life, or
Yeah.
I'd like to think that
the manga, he
somebody,
went down the wrong path.
obviously things didn't go the direction that they were, like went a different direction or whatnot. But when it comes to how nasty he was at gaming, I know that he would have been like a tester or a fucking like on some level he would have been doing something involving games. Like he was that. There was nothing that was gonna stop that kid from being like out. Like he was James's level of nasty
yeah,
when we were in junior high, and that shit to me was crazy.
yeah. He
And
was
then
one
it
of
didn't
those-
stop at fighting games. Like
Yeah,
competitively, fighting games was like he was nasty, but he would crush any game that came out. Period. Like
yeah.
it didn't matter what it was, RPG, an action adventure. Mike was done. Like he would have been one of those dudes with a YouTube channel with millions of followers, just giving like run throughs the day the game drops because
Or
he was
speedrun,
that
yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
Because I
Because-
remember Resident Evil 2. He
Yeah.
knew like every secret, right? He knew like
Yep.
every little secret, every like wild thing. Like he knew like everything.
Because back then, the internet wasn't really a big thing or whatever, so we didn't have YouTube videos to watch. But he was the first person where I actually witnessed that he got it under the 2 hour or 3 hour mark to get the like unlockables, and I was
Mhm.
like, God damn, like really?
Yeah.
I was like,
Wow.
I could beat the game, but I can't do it as quick as. I was like, he
Like,
was
should
cool.
we be stuck on? Yeah, should we be stuck
Mhm.
on? We're like, yo, how do you do it? We're like, oh yeah, you just go around there. I'm just like, yo, like he mastered every game he played. Like,
That's
yeah,
like
it was,
the-
yeah,
just randomly related, but that's like the people who figured out like the super jumps in like Halo. Like I always respect those people. It's like, how the fuck did you figure that out? What were
Yeah.
you doing? That you fucking hopped there, looked backward, shot there, and jumped in that exact spot and knew that would bounce you up. Like what?
yeah. Or like the any percenters who
Yeah.
beat freaking Mario 64 by bouncing their butt against the right wall, and it's like, yo,
Yeah.
they break the game. It's funny because that's my son loves to do stuff like that. It's just those are people who just love to find, the little cracks of the game, glitches and stuff. It's like, yo,
Yeah.
people would be nasty, and it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
just
it's
know how to find those weak spots like intuitively. Like, fucking,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And the cool thing was that Mike wasn't a gatekeeper. Like he wasn't trying to hold shit to himself. Like he would just kind of be like, "Oh yeah, this is how you do this," or "No man, I went this route." Like he was just open about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Nothing's
that's cool.
worse than people who keep like, yo, just share how you did it. Like, why you gotta like
Exactly.
keep it to yourself, man? Yo,
Yeah.
I hate
I
people
hate
like that. To anyone
Agreed.
listening.
he hates your guts. But yeah,
We
I
got
think
beef, so.
Jose said he's traumatized because you never let him touch the floor on Tekken while growling like king.
Let me tell you something about Mike. Okay, for those that don't know Mike personally, Mike will pop this fucking Tekken CD into his PlayStation, right? Stand up, waiting for it to load up and hit start, and ask you if you want to test your buttons. Look at you and say, "Oh, are you good?" And then proceed to fuck you up with no remorse while he growls at you because he's playing as king. So.
Yeah.
If it wasn't enough, I'm getting my ass beat. Now I'm starting to take it personally because he's growling at me. And so I'm like, damn, bro, like, but it rubbed off on me. You know what I'm saying? That's something I took with me because as I started getting nastier and nastier at fighting games, I started doing that, and me and Mario started doing that to each other, and it just got ugly. It just
The same growls. The same
yeah,
growls.
type of growls. Just, we were always shit talkers in games, period. But
Wait, we gotta hear some of these. We can't just like talk about them not hearing. What are we talking about here?
well, we and Mario got one. Mario learned something from his brother back in the days playing Madden. Mario and his brother had a very competitive streak going on in the Madden games, and whenever Mario's brother or vice versa would beat each other, they would stare at the other person like just with a serious face, just stare at them and then rub their chin, start tickling their chin and going Gucci.
I remember when y'all motherfuckers would do that shit. Y'all would like touch there was nothing worse than someone touching your chin after they beat your ass. I remember going to fucking Mario, like I'm just like, get the fuck out of here.
Yo,
I hate that shit.
Oh, yo, the person is, I'm telling you, games can vouch. This is some stupid shit we used to really do. Like, we wanted you to get extra pissed off, and this carried over into everything because we'd be at Gio's house playing WrestleMania 2000, and we'd bust him and JJ's ass, and we do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd turn my back, and Mario would ruffle my shirt to make it look like it's blowing in the wind. Like, we do crazy. Like that's why I started competitive gaming while I enjoy it, Evo, I love all that shit. I think all of it is awesome. I just feel like on some level it's just not the same because the level of shit talking that you could achieve, now you're gonna get canceled for anything. Like if you're that much of a you're gonna get fucking canceled because people don't want to play with you. They just want to take their loss and go. Before we didn't want you to go without knowing that we own that arcade stick. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Do you guys watch any of the Evo tournaments like nowadays? Because they still got them. Like some
Tekken.
of them are pretty fucking
I watched
wild.
Tekken.
Yeah. I watched. Sonic Fox is probably the biggest name in like Mortal Kombat right now.
Wait, what's the name?
Sonic Fox.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I've seen him when he was playing like other games.
But he plays
Smash Brothers.
He just demolishes people, and he's gotten away with saying some pretty smart ass shit to competitors on their way out. He talks some shit.
Yeah. You
I've
see,
seen him embarrass people.
He's somebody I'm convinced would have survived the arcade era because he has it in him. He's that person. I think there's a lot of guys like that in that world, but it's still like there's a lot of drama in the FGC. For those that don't know, if anybody still follows it, I follow it.
What are you trying to say, Mike?
No, I was gonna say, well, no,
trying to get a word in.
My bad.
to touch base on the Evo thing. Tekken. I usually watch the not the full Evo tournament, but highlights from the past. I normally follow Little Majin. He's a Tekken. He's a King player as well.
Oh, okay.
He has a brother too, right?
I don't know.
What version of Tekken are they playing? They're playing like the original.
No, the Tekken 7. That they're doing now.
I got
but I watch him and I'm like, yeah, I'm not tournament good. like his level of King is superior to mine. But back to the sounds and stuff. I don't do it anymore. I don't do that anymore.
Come on.
And you gotta stay in character. So King was a Jaguar wrestler or whatever. Well, he's a human, but he had a Jaguar mask, and that's how he would sound. So I was like, all right, that's how I'm gonna sound. And to the point about me standing up and playing, if I sit down and play, I feel like my skills is like handicapped. So if I stand up, I feel like I could give it my all. So I just want to touch
shit just got real.
That's that's real competitive shit. Like there's certain ways that you could only get off your best playing, and that makes I hadn't even thought about that. All these years I thought you were just being a dick, but that makes perfect sense.
I believe that. I mean, for a long time that was me in Halo. I couldn't play Halo sitting down for like 2 years after it came out until I trained myself how to play sitting down. I could only play Halo standing up.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it took me a while to learn how to play sitting down. It's a different feel, way different.
Yeah, I just don't know. Like I just couldn't sit still, and I just felt restricted. And
I probably
But
better
yeah,
tune it
so
down now, but
You felt like an uncaged animal.
Speaking of animals, what one franchise that I would love to see come back is
Kuroko.
Bloody fucking Roar. Where is Bloody Roar? We haven't gotten a Bloody Roar since what, like that part
Cube.
3 or
GameCube.
GameCube? It was GameCube, right? Yeah.
GameCube.
Okay.
Yeah, they had an elephant character and a bird, and I was like, and then that was it, and then it just fell off.
There's been no re-release or anything like that, remaster.
I don't think so,
Nothing?
right? Not. I mean, if there
Not that I
there
heard
was,
of.
I don't. It probably didn't really hit. Make too much noise
Yeah.
or gain traction. But
Who made that?
that's a good question. I forgot.
Let's Google. Let's
Got real
Google.
quiet.
Wait, they did it. Are we hoping for a game that came out already?
Right? Imagine like Bloody Roar 7's already out. What are you talking about? There's a Tekken X Bloody Roar.
Developer
King and that's it.
Hudson Soft and publisher
Oh.
Activision.
Hudson.
Konami.
Hudson's
Wow.
Activision. No wonder we don't got no Bloody Roar. They're probably never. And if
Yeah,
they do
busy
ever
making
release
them-
that shit, it'll be like you get one free character, $60 game, and you have to buy fucking character packs for $40
Yeah.
each. Like,
Want to be a bunny? $50.
right?
Yeah, but no, like
Oh,
what I'm
Hudson
waiting
Soft.
for is they did Street Fighter X Tekken,
Right.
and they were supposed to come out with Tekken X Street Fighter
Yeah.
under the Tekken model, but
Okay.
they just it's just quiet, and I think Tekken 7 released Akuma, and maybe they're just like, okay, that's good enough.
Yeah, I mean,
it's probably going based on sales too. So maybe if Street Fighter X Tekken probably didn't. I guess I'm assuming because that's what it all comes down to is money. And then Capcom and their fighting division shit has just been weird. It's like and then fucks. We've talked about Street Fighter 5, which like have you even touched Street Fighter 5 at all, Mike?
Just
exactly.
the training. That's it.
Exactly. Like Street Fighter 5 is just one of those games that it's just like, as you heard Jose passionately talk about, it's like they fucked up in the beginning, and it's just like, I don't know. That's the one thing Capcom I hope is fixing, for their future editions. But we really need, I know I mentioned Bloody Roar, but we need to really go back to basics. We need that X-Men versus Street Fighter. I mean, Marvel versus Capcom. Pixel art, old school comic look, like bring back the 6-button, fighting style. Like we need that shit back. Cause I think if out of all I think Skullgirls is like the closest thing that apparently like the way it plays is very close to Marvel vs. Capcom, as well as its art style.
yeah.
But it's, I want to fucking play as Wolverine. I want to play as,
Exactly.
like
Spidey and Iron Man.
exactly.
Yeah.
I want to do my fucking proton cannon and shit, and it's like, and if you touched the trash fire that was, did you try Marvel's Capcom Infinite, Mike, by chance?
I did.
Did
Yeah.
you like it?
Listen.
No, I like the Marvel Capcom 3, but
Yeah, that
a
was
little
it.
bit, but not.
Infinite-
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Infinite was
my
garbage.
I didn't even try.
yeah, it was garbage. And here's my thing: like Marvel versus Capcom 3,
Mhm.
for me, it already had undergone too many changes. It was fun factor wise, you had some fun with it. The animation didn't look terrible. You had some fun with it. It had a certain level of fun that you could kind of get away with still presenting it as a suitable follow up to whatever the fuck we had before, right?
Mhm.
But when Tatsunaku versus Capcom came out, that's the first time that I was aware when it came out on the Wii. That game only came out on the Wii.
Right.
And that was the first time that they simplified the button scheme. And I remember being like, okay, this is different, but this is not this is not the game I was expecting anyway. This is a whole different range of characters and stuff. Then they came out and announced Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was coming out, and they said that it was going to follow that button scheme. And at that moment, I knew it just wasn't going to be it for me. It's like you cannot simplify a game like Marvel vs. Capcom. That game, to me, even if I'm a hardcore Mortal Kombat fanatic, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is highly regarded amongst a lot of us as the greatest fighting game because that shit brought levels and levels and levels of drama to the arcades. That game was like, you started off with Children of the Atom, which, as we mentioned, that shit I used to play it in Harlem in a laundromat. That's when I first got nasty at that particular series, because every day had the recipe. They knew what they were doing. One thing Capcom has always been good at is they'll take a recipe and they'll do that shit constantly, and
They
they
sure
milked
will.
out like 7 games that were just like that. Like you had Marvel superheroes, just Street Fighter, and then and the MVC series. You also had Children of the Atom. I believe Children of the Atom was the first one.
That was the first
I might
Marvel one,
was that the
Marvel
first one?
superheroes, and then X-Men versus
Right.
Street Fighter.
I think that's the
See,
one that they had at the arcade
yeah,
by the
and I
church
like
that I played.
not to overdo the point that I've always said, but this is not a time to just keep trying to like the shit's not working for you guys. Like, don't try to keep reinventing the wheel. Go back to basics. People want that. We don't like if you take Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and put that shit in Evo, people will go crazy because they did when they did it last year. When Evo came back and they were like, "Oh, MVC is going to be back in the tournament," and they bumped like Mortal Kombat 11, I think it was, or 10, I can't remember. They bumped some Mortal Kombat title, and I know that MVC 2 ended up on there, and that shit caused hysteria. People were fucking excited. If you came out and said that you're gonna release a new Marvel vs. Capcom game, but you show us a trailer of what we think is Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but it has newer characters and it just throw some of the rival schools guys in there, you know what I mean? Like, get funky with it, and comic book sprites, 6-button layout, supers, the whole nine. Fucking as a promo, put out fucking arcades of it. It'll go crazy. They could single handedly revive the arcade market if they do some crazy shit like that.
Just team up with Supreme.
They seriously could revive. Capcom got the power to do something like that. If they approach Supreme like, hey, we want to put out an exclusive arcade for this new game that it's never going to come out on arcade, it'll be levels. Like, it's just, you can have fun. And I think the people there just aren't used to, they're just afraid to take the risk. And I don't see it as a risk. I see it as nothing but, it could be nothing but beneficial.
Yeah,
What-
whenever they
what-
drop it, it's gonna go crazy.
What idea? I mean, what do you think if they ever came out with a new crossover, Mortal Kombat X Killer Instinct?
I mean, I think that would be novelty, honestly, because
it fits.
It fits, but Killer Instinct right now is like, it's still like people enjoy it from what I see. It's exclusively on Xbox from what I know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and that kind of took like a
It might be.
Yeah, it is
might-
because
yeah.
that's
There's
a
a-
first
a
party,
big-
so it's on Game Pass.
Okay.
right. So there's like a strong majority of people who like myself. I love Killer Instinct, the original, but I never played that one that they have on Xbox.
No.
I don't know if it'd go. I feel like it might be something like Mortal Kombat versus DC, unless they executed it extremely well. I think it would be something that comes and goes. It'll be cool for a moment, and then kind of it's hard to execute
So
that.
Yeah.
So then here's a question: do you have a matchup that could work with Mortal Kombat? Because that seems to like the DC thing was alright. That's because Warner Brother owns that shit. So what is a good crossover for Mortal Kombat? Is there one?
Unless anybody
I
else
thought
want to take the
Killer
floor on
Instinct
this one.
Would have matched because Killer Instinct is brutal, violent, and stuff. And I always like Killer Instinct. And it's not as popular today as it was back then. But maybe if they put it with Mortal Kombat, they could revive the franchise.
I mean, it is.
I feel like they'd have to change the characters though, like redesign them.
Well, I mean, they did that for the. I mean, if you go the route that that Tekken and like Street Fighter did, like they, I mean, Tekken's, not a Street Fighter game at all, but they made it work. So it would have to take liberties. It'd have to be like a reimagining of some of the characters, or whatnot. But they are, this is related. They are looking for another developer because the guys who did, Killer Instinct that came out for Xbox, they got bought out or some shit. They don't work for Microsoft anymore. So, they could reinvent the franchise. It could be something down the line, but it looks like Microsoft. And I just literally read this like 2-3 days ago that they're looking for a developer to take over the franchise. So, but no, I was asking you, Jose, because you were saying that it would be novelty for you. So like, you don't have any idea of something that's been like cooking in the back of your mind, or are you just trying to let that info out yet? Kind of.
No. Well, I'm gonna be honest for you. This is something that I've always conjured up in my own mind. The battle. There's a real battle. If you go back as far as 1991, 1992, on the arcades, it became you're a street like there were a majority of people were Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Like you loved both. It didn't matter. You'd spend some time on that one, then switch over, spend some time on this one. But people always wanted to see Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat because those were the two biggest fighters.
Yep.
Mortal Kombat came out of nowhere on some bullshit. Real people ripping off heads. They're the reason why we have a rating system for video games.
Yep.
All this M plus and
I've got the
17 plus,
answer.
that's all Mortal Kombat. They had Congress people going fucking crazy. They deserve all the props in the world for changing the game when it comes to the game. You feel me? Like they changed the game. Now everybody always wanted them to go up against each other. Now my thing is, if you want to get into what kind of design it should be, we've already seen plenty of 3D Street Fighter titles because the EX series was dope. I love the EX series, especially EX2, which for some reason wasn't really people didn't play that one as much, I guess, but I love that game. But we've seen Street Fighter characters pretty much in every design. We have not seen Mortal Kombat characters designed by Street Fighter artists.
Mhm.
If you gave me a Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter that looked like Third Impact with some touched up animation, and you just give them the same type of fighting stances, the same type of fighting mechanics as you would in a Street Fighter game, have Mortal Kombat have to adjust their whole shit. You know what I'm saying?
So
Have
no
them-
running.
Yeah, no. I mean dashes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
okay.
you know, even Mortal Kombat 11 doesn't have any running. It just has dashes. They got rid of running. So,
okay. It's been a while.
if you had like a Scorpion animated like Ken and Ryu, like just diesel fucking ninjas, and give them all their moves, but make it Street Fighter style, like. You can't do none of those crazy infinite combos that you would do in a Mortal Kombat game, obviously, but keep it within the realm of Street Fighter. I would love to see that because the first thing people are going to think about is Mortal Kombat has a lot of blood. Street Fighter, has always been supers. That's their thing. And Mortal Kombat has always been fatalities. You could have both. This is 2021. Like, you could literally have a game where Mortal Kombat characters have supers in the style of Street Fighter characters, but make it that if you finish somebody off with that, it kills them. Like you see blood, and Street Fighter is not a stranger to blood. Like the animated series, Street Fighter 2 animated series, that shit is fucking crazy. It's it's violent as fuck. Capcom puts out violent games nonstop. They don't have like some type of squeaky clean image. Like these dudes are out here really busting each other's ass for the last 30 years. Switch it up. You already have bloody ass games. Nobody's gonna bat an eye if you give us a dope Street Fighter game with Mortal Kombat characters in it. Like, it'll be fire. I think it'll be fire if you execute it right.
And they could do a dope story because you have the evil version of some of these characters. So imagine evil Ryu really having some wild ass fucking, bloody ass combo, or like he fucking punches you, when he does his. And then or make them fun or make them outrageous. That's what I mean. I think that's what they really need to do is just make them. Maybe if you're gonna tone down the bloodiness, just make them a little, more on the outrageous side. Like just have, like he does a fucking hurricane kick and just like beats the shit out of you, limbs flying out or some shit. I don't know. I'm just throwing out whatever. But I think that's always been the problem. The fatalities.
There's a lot of.
But did when DC and Mortal Kombat, the superheroes had fatalities, right?
Yeah, the superheroes had fatalities.
They weren't as bloody or something, or were they?
Right. Well, what they ended up doing was they watered down all the fatalities.
Yeah.
Right. The Joker, he would do his fatality where he like shoots you in the head, but the camera zooms out so you don't see it. There were some uncensored versions of it. Like it was just like again, it came off like a novelty. Like it made sense because Warner Brothers and them were working with each other. But the reason they decided that they want to do an Injustice series separate from Mortal Kombat is because that shit just didn't really work. Like the story was very, very watered down. It didn't feel like a genuine Mortal Kombat, and it felt like the DC characters kind of got washed out too, because everybody was expecting like a Mortal Kombat game with DC characters doing wild shit, which is not what we got. But yeah, like you could definitely execute it. Like I would love to see Mortal Kombat like 2 era characters like Kung Lao and Liu Kang drawn as Street Fighter characters and give them a 6-button combo scheme too. Like essentially what you're doing is recreating Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter 3 and basing it around a whole different set of characters that you never fucked with and incorporating their classic moves. So if you go into it with that vision, everything's already laid out for you. You know, like
That's
you
true.
know
They could
these
do
people's
some, like-
backgrounds, you have their stories, you have their game,
Yeah.
their moves already. You could make this shit fire. Like
The thing
they
is, like,
just don't want to take the risk, bro. And that's we get the shitty end of the stick of that. But
well, I think it's like really hard. Like I think it's harder than even it sounds like, because especially because you guys like like the real feel of each of these games, each of these characters. Like I don't think it'd even be feasible or possible to convert the feel of Mortal Kombat to Street Fighter, or vice versa. They're so different. So it's like, which
Right.
style would you want them to do then? Because it would have to be
Well-
one or the other.
Because you'd
Well,
have
that's what I was saying.
please.
Yeah,
That's what I was saying,
It would be
like-
Street Fighter style.
possibly-
It would be Mortal Kombat in.
So
Well,
it
that's
would
how
be
they've
Street
always
Fighter.
done
That's
it.
why I
Yeah.
said
Okay.
Yeah,
But it's
it
like
would
you
be-
have
wouldn't have the
Capcom
same
versus.
feel, like, 'cause you wouldn't be able to have the same moves for like the Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
moves,
because
you
that's
know?
that's
It just
kind of
would
like
never
Street Fighter
feel
X
the same.
Tekken. So Street Fighter X Tekken, it was
Right,
Tekken
yeah.
characters in the Street Fighter engine. You know what I mean? So yeah, they didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, they
Yeah,
are. They
that's why
they
I was
played
like
the
the
same.
Tekken
so-
X Street Fighter was gonna be the other way.
The other way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I
Like
guess if they do that,
essentially what you're doing is forgetting about the idea of trying to grasp the Mortal Kombat player, because Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat hasn't remained the same. They're even guilty of switching up their shit every game.
yeah,
Like
that's
Mortal
very
Kombat
true.
9, 10, and 11 play differently, like in
Yeah.
ways that you can't. I can't jump on Mortal Kombat 11 after playing 10 and just know what the fuck I'm doing. It feels heavier.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what you're doing is essentially just using the characters and their set of moves. You could incorporate that in any way you want and modify it in whichever way you want, but you're keeping it to a Street Fighter game and like the mechanics and the
On a
aesthetic.
technical level, it's still
Yeah, like
Street Fighter.
like Blanca doing his like rolling ball. Kano has that move, so that makes sense for someone like him. Rolento used to have certain moves where like he'd use like things where he'd go across the screen, like that would be Scorpion teleporting. You know what I mean? Like there are ways where they could really make it interesting and switch it up, but you're just forgetting about grasping the Mortal Kombat character. Like let's the Mortal Kombat player. Like let's just aim for the Street Fighter world, and the Mortal Kombat players are gonna come because that shit's just too fire. And anybody
be
who's a
dope is
Mortal
if they
Kombat
could
player at
switch.
heart is a Street Fighter player. You know what I mean? Like it'll be dope if they really did it, but for them it's seen as a risk, I guess. You
If
know?
ever you could switch back, you can choose what style. All right, we want Mortal Kombat style for this round, Street Fighter
Oh,
style
that
for
would
the
be
next
crazy.
Alternating
would be some
rounds,
wild
yeah.
round. Just it would adjust
And-
the mechanics on the fly. That should be dope.
Also, I'm just not to spend too much time on this, but I'm also just a huge fan of the idea of certain Mortal Kombat levels animated, like drawn out in Street Fighter style animation. Like
That's cool.
that
yeah.
the living forest drawn out and having like a fucking Sagat versus Liu Kang would be fucking weird. It would be bugged
Yeah.
out. Like if I saw a trailer for that, I would reserve that shit today, because I believe that the only way that should come out is if it's executed right. We're not saying perfect, but do that shit right. Like make it that people are like, yo, that game is fire. You know?
Has everyone
Yeah.
here seen it was a fan made video between Ryu and Scorpion,
Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah.
That's a Mugen
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah,
and
Mugen,
it was
yeah.
phenomenal. And I with Jose's idea of that, that's when that thought entered my head, but
Right.
it just never happened and stuff.
Mhm.
But I was like, if they did it like that, it would have been awesome.
There
I don't
was
think I've seen
one.
that one.
There was one where
It's
to this
great.
day, I'm pretty sure I could find it, but I know for a long time I lost it. There was one with Akuma versus Ryu, and they're playing in like a modified version of that kind of field that you fight in the Street Fighter Alpha 2. They're
I
like
think
in
I've
a
seen
mod.
it, yeah.
Remember that stage where it's like raining and it's thundering and you're just fighting there?
Mhm.
It was a modified version of that where the grass was white and the sky looked purple and it had a tree like a bonsai in the back, and it was playing Final Fantasy music. It was playing Final Fantasy. I forgot what Final Fantasy it was, but it was playing music from a Final Fantasy game, and this shit lasted like 8 minutes of them just busting each other's ass, and it was fucking epic because of the music. It looked
gotta
so
look that
good.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like, this shit is old. Like I'm talking about, this is like E-Bombs World days, like 2003, like 2002. It was early
Not that
Mugen.
old dog. Damn. Shit.
It's a long time ago, baby.
Easy, man.
It's almost 20 years
Easy.
ago.
Easy. We don't say those words out loud, all right?
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
Yeah, so it's like it definitely, there's definitely some missed opportunities, and it sucks because now with the way monetization is nowadays, and now I think if we're gonna keep it like other reasons why it won't happen besides creative differences and things like that is the fact that who monetizes that shit, you know what I mean? And then it's like now it's all about selling characters, and it's like, you know, the fact that they sell you, you know, they take out legacy characters and sell them back to you is like one of the most ridiculous things I've seen in the fighting scene. So it's like, industry wise, I feel like that's probably what's probably always going to hold it back, you know, moving forward, unless it's like a fan made like playable game. Like we're always going to have now there's just roadblocks because of, you know, industry roadblocks now, and it's like that shit sucks, you know. I think that's probably one of the worst things that's been happening to fighting games. It's like, you know, even Tekken 7, it was like, you know, I enjoyed Tekken 7, but the fact that they took out, you know, legacy characters, and now I have to, you know, it's like I get it because
Lei,
it's like
Anna,
some of my most favorite characters were all like, when, you know, and it took a long time to bring some of these characters in finally, and then they were all in download, you know, DLC packs, and I'm like, I think I finally ended up getting when it was like dirt cheap, you know, like I finally, like it was like $5 for you know, I'm like, I'm not spending 20, 30, 40 bucks on a DLC for, you know, for characters that should have been in the base game, you know, like come on, give us Tekken 3, at least Tekken 3, you know, like, but you know, so that's my problem, you know, with modern fighting games. It's like, you know, just like what was it, what's the one that finally came out, Does Your Soul Still Burn? What's that from?
Soul Calibur.
Soul Calibur, yeah, that right. They 6
don't
came
think
out,
about
right?
it. It's Soul Calibur, yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, Soul Calibur 6. It was like, that was another one. It was like I wanted to get it, but it's like it was immediately under controversy because they were trying to sell legacy characters back to people. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember because I wanted that because Soul Calibur was one of my favorites. Like I love that one.
Yeah, the old school.
That's right. Yeah,
the weapon-based fighting, man, that shit.
Fuck yeah! I used to love Spawn because I had it for Xbox.
Oh, exactly. And I think I had it for
Yeah.
GameCube now because it came with Link. You know, I thought that shit was fire.
And that was cool when Soul Calibur had, depending on your system, different. And I was like, that's awesome. Like at least,
cool.
At least it's not like now. Xbox and PlayStation, you got the same game, but then you got certain things that are only PlayStation exclusive, and it's like, are you kidding me? Like Destiny, you know, that just comes to mind, and it's like
whole
that's
missions though, like whole strike missions were like console exclusive.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Like taking out full on content and modes from like did that with Call of Duty with the zombies. It's like if you're playing on PlayStation, you can play almost any of the maps. Zombies, it's a smaller scale, but you can, it's 2 players and you just fight waves running around the map. So you could be on like Nuketown, you could be on whatever, and then the main zombie game has very specific story base for that mode. But they took it out for PC. You can't play the 2-player mode on PC or Xbox. Only on PS5 or 4, whatever.
Or Xbox. Wow.
Yeah, it's trash. I can't.
I think if they just did what they did with like Soul Calibur, if you don't get the PlayStation version, you'll get this for Xbox and vice versa. And I think that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't like taking things away from other people and, you know, and then walling it off to a console. If you want to give people separate things that are equal but different, like, all right,
exactly.
You get Spawn, you get fucking Yoda or Darth Vader, or, you know, you get Link, whatever. Yeah. That's fine. You all got something, but to stop people from getting content.
Exactly, like that's such a
that goes on right now.
Yeah, that's such a douchebaggy fucking thing to do. It's like, don't take. I'm all for. I have fun talking shit in console wars. You know, who gives a fuck? I made a tweet the other day. I was like, you know, you should only be allowed to fight in a console war if your parents bought you the console. Like that's it. As a grown ass man, if you 35. And your mother didn't buy you your PlayStation, you're not allowed to fight about which one's better. Your mother or your guardian or somebody who's like 30 years older than you has to buy you the console for Christmas or your birthday. Not for you can't be spoiled.
You have to be defending somebody's honor.
Exactly. Like the reason we had console wars back then is because your mother or your guardian, your loved one bought you that, and you
I
had
love my mom.
you had no choice but to fight for what you couldn't control. You know what I mean? Because come on, back in the day, we
Yeah.
could buy both.
True.
As 12-year-olds, 10-years, we would have bought both. So why, as grown ass
Yeah,
men, are we
true.
fighting about which console's better? Like I said,
Because we still broke.
that's what I'm saying.
Because we still
Oh, you still broke. You're right. We will be broke. But hey, that's your problem now. You know what I mean? You got no choice back in the day. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
that's
that's why I'm
funny.
like, people who be like, yeah, look at this, and be like OD serious on that shit. It's like, come on,
True.
man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like,
that's a bit ridiculous.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
why are we really? What are we fighting about? Because I didn't want to spend $500 on the other thing. Like, no, I bought what I bought. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
People really be out here fighting about that shit. So I'm like, that's why I don't believe in. Like, I agree. Like, I don't believe in walling off content because you have the wrong console. That sucks. Because now I have multiple copies of a game, and you telling me I can't play that game that we all bought? Because I have it on PlayStation and PC, but since y'all only have it on PC, I can't play with y'all. Like, that's just whack, so whack to me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, they need to stop selling those
Yeah.
deals. I know it's a simple like mode, but that's dope. It's a little 2-player mode
still.
for any of the maps, and then every 5 or 10 waves, you fight a little boss. And I'm like, yo, I was looking forward to playing that shit, and it was like, oh, it's only on PlayStation. You fucking assholes.
Yeah, that's why. That's why, I like the cross play. I like seeing it become more and more prevalent. Like, I think it's a good thing, and hopefully, it just pushes the console makers to it seems like Sony mostly, and to stop walling shit off or stop paying companies to block shit.
Exactly.
Just start offering cooler shit.
Exactly. Like,
we could all play together. Just PlayStation. You get different colored skins for your guns.
And that's the thing. I don't understand.
Just little shit like that.
Yeah, how they're pulling away content from third-party games when you're already leading the industry besides Nintendo. Like, no one's buying a PlayStation 5 because you get one extra strike in Destiny, or one extra, mode in a game. Like, that's not the reason why they're buying it. You're buying your PlayStation for the exclusives because you come out with bangers every year, or if not every other year minimum.
Yeah.
That's why we buy. Nobody's buying that because I get that's the shittiest move. I'm like, I was never happy about that. It's like, like maybe performance,
with the first party titles.
Yeah, it's like, I'll talk shit about performance. Like, this shit runs better. Yeah. So that's something you could talk a little shit about, because it's like, Microsoft sucks because this game, or PlayStation is trash because look at the frame rates, or look at this or that. Like, that's a little bit different. But walling off shit is like, nobody's happy. I don't think I've seen one person, sane person, because you're gonna have your idiots who are gonna jump on every little crumb they could say, like, justify their $500 over your $500 for the other console.
True.
But yeah. I think we can wrap it up. Is there anything anybody was looking to cover before we kind of wrap it up here?
All right, I have a question, actually.
Sure.
A question for Mike. All right, Mike, listen. You are our guest, all right? You are our guest.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Mike was, he's a fighting game OG. I just want to dial back a little bit, all right? We're going to discuss something here. Games here used to throw birthday jams in his house, and we'd have battles, like fighting game battles. And there was one year where he threw a tournament, and of course the last two standing were me and Mike here. Hey Mike, if we did a repeat of that, who do you think would come out winning, and what game would you want to play against me?
Me and Tekken.
The game in question here was Marvel vs. Capcom 2. No, 3. Sorry. And I was just busting everybody's ass that night. And you know what? I'm going to come out and say it straight up. And this is just to back my point about them simplifying shit. I am not that good at Marvel vs. Capcom. I am not that great at that game. I got really good at 2. 3 was just so simple that I could do. I know that the reason Mike busted my ass that night, I busted Mike's ass so much that night, is because his lack of interest, number one, and the simplification of that game. Like, I was able to bust everyone's ass because I just knew how to work that game with pop-ups, and I wouldn't let people touch the ground. If I took it because it felt good to win against fucking Mike, the guy that growls at you when he busts your ass. But the truth is, we need a. I think I just need to pick up a Tekken game and try to get good, and I'll come see you. So that's it's a fair battle. So I'm just putting that in the air. You know what I'm saying?
Just changing that topic, but I never really liked Marvel vs. Capcom Part 2. My favorite one was actually the original.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I
can
know.
see that.
Why is that?
I'm an oddball.
Why is that? I'm
bet
curious.
I
as to
know
like,
a
why.
couple of reasons, but go on.
Well, I didn't like the third person select a fighter thing. It's too many swapping and stuff like that. I liked. Oh, and then they removed 2 of the buttons.
Exactly.
Right. So you had light, medium, and heavy for punch and kick. Then with Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it was just 2, and
that's
then
when they first removed the 2 medium.
So I didn't like that. And then
I forgot about that. That's right.
with Marvel vs. Capcom 1, you had that special assist character that you just press the 2 middle buttons, and then you had a certain amount of chances to use them. And it was like, okay, you have to ration when you want to use them. And anyway, but to me, Part 1 was and is always going to be my favorite.
What's her name? Who was the best one to pick that she went through? Like she did the Psylocke, yes.
Or Juggernaut.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Juggernaut.
Psylocke or Juggernaut as the assist was like that should made or break your game. Like because you'd be in the middle of it and someone's about to do their super and here comes Psylocke interrupting that shit or Juggernaut fucking your day up because of that fucking assist. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that.
Yeah.
But like I'd be happy with either form returning and just but I agree. Like I kind of missed all 6 buttons, bring that shit back. Because that's what's missing. Give us the control style of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 with the roster of 2 and 3, and
exactly,
and the art style of 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like
and
that's what
with Part 2,
misses.
the roster was like humongous and stuff.
wild.
So but anyway, that's what I gotta say about that.
Anyways,
no, some things just gotta stay. If it's not broke, don't fix it, man. Some things I get why they try to do a bunch of shit, but bro, listen, we want what we had before because that's why you owe the success to that. You know what I mean? Like the reason why you have such a huge following, the reason why people still talk about these games to this day is because of how fucking dope they were, and we didn't have half of the technology we have now. You know what I'm saying? Like they could perfect that shit. They could perfect that shit in a way. Like, don't touch what isn't meant to be touched. Like, the imperfection of some of those games is what made it work. All this patching and shit, and now the person's going to be in the air for 1.3 seconds instead of 1.7. Like, bro, we don't give a fuck about that. Just put out a game and don't touch it. I would love it if Capcom said we're releasing Marvel vs. Capcom Legends. It's going to have a new roster. It's going to be like a revision of Part 2, 6-button layout, and we're not patching shit. We're putting it out, and that's what you're gonna get. There's not gonna be no DLC. Like, really take it back. People would respect them for that. That shit will start a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Like if you say we're not patching this, we're putting this game out. That's it.
And Warren, it's not competitive play. That's the problem. Is that now it's like and this could be a problem for the players too, because remember the fighting community it can be vocal, and I and I remember speaking to people who were like, oh, I don't play that game, it's not balanced, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't just play like people won't play certain fighting games because it got to be perfectly balanced for every character, and I'm like, how about we stop that? Or have your tournament roster with fun, like let some like what's that called, the exhibition fights happen that aren't balanced, like you never know, that could be
there's a difference between, I feel there's a difference between balance and characters being completely broken. Like now you have characters that are just fucking ridiculous for no reason, really really easy to use, you just shit that you just can't block, like shit like that is ridiculous. Like bro, before there was always, I've never played a Street Fighter game in my life or a Mortal Kombat game for that matter in my life back then, like let's say up to like part 2 and 3, where I felt like it was just impossible to beat this character with who I'm playing with. It was just like, bro, when you finally figured that person out, you could counter them. It wasn't like you were getting cheesed to death in the corner being bounced. There were only certain versions of arcades that came out that allowed you to do completely banana shit. But for the most part, in my experience on the arcades, we had fair matches. If you were using a Scorpion or Sub-Zero, you were cheesy, or if you were using a Ken or Ryu, you were cheesy because those were considered the more simplistic characters, and everybody knew a half circle and a low punch or a half circle high punch is a certain move. Yeah, you know what I mean? But as you started figuring out how to use these characters, like even if it was unbalanced, you could whoop somebody's ass. You know what I mean? Like I feel like everything has gotten to a point where they could just put out bullshit. It's half-assed. They could patch it later. Every little thing get like even Melina being in Mortal Kombat 11. That's all people complaining that she wasn't in it, and they fucking gave into that. Like leave her the fuck out. Like you understand? This is the same people who took out every ninja in the game. You didn't have a reptile, a smoke, a scorpion. You didn't have nobody but Sub-Zero without a mask, and he just had the same moves. But they got rid of every ninja. And people were like, oh shit, what the fuck are they doing? Then they came out with Ultimate Part 3. And they had everybody back in it. They had Katana, Melina. But it's just an example of how back then it took years for some shit like for them to give into something like that. Now it's like the second you see a forum talking about, oh, Melina's not in it, this is fucking, like, I'm not playing it because she's like crybaby shit. Like, bro, stick to your guns. Put out a game, say we're not patching shit, this is what the game is. And you could only get it on physical copy. It's not going to be on digital. Take the risk. Like, I don't give a shit no more. You take the risk, make a certain amount of money back, and just see what happens. That shit will... Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm going crazy with the just physical, but if you release it physically first, like maybe first 6 months you released it physical copies only and then released it online, it's about... I think that in order to make cool shit happen, you got to be really, really willing to take some risk, and you get everybody back eventually. They lose more money putting out bullshit like Street Fighter V. Mm-hmm. They lose money doing that. I return that shit in a day. So what's the difference? Why don't you do some cool shit and lose money? You know what I'm saying? Fuck that.
Right?
Do some cool shit and lose money.
Shit to lose money, all right? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, stop losing money with whack shit. Like, if you're going to risk losing money, don't make it trash. You losing money and you disappointing us. Do some hot shit, lose money. I guarantee you make it back. You ain't making back no Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite money. Nobody wants to play that bullshit. You know what I'm saying? You never making that shit back.
That shit looks...
But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
It came out on Game Pass, and that shit was just... I couldn't. It felt like a mobile game. Like, dead ass felt like a mobile game. I was literally pressing like 2 buttons, and I was doing combos, and so I was like, what is this?
There's a legion of 10-year-olds out there who fucking love that shit.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, they're gonna be here in 20 years, being like, remember when Infinite came out and all those old heads hated it, man, and that was the greatest fighting game.
Exactly. Just needed time to develop and mature, man. They patched it and it was so good.
Oh man. But yeah, I think that we're gonna wrap it up here. Here on VGXL. Mike, did you have a good time chatting with us today?
I did. Thank you for having me again. Hope to be here again in the future.
For sure.
Yeah, no problem, man.
His
it was great having you.
Inward.
and yeah, I had a lot of fun talking tonight about fighting games, reminiscing a little bit. I know some of you don't know the context of some of the things we talk about, so we try to keep that clear. But again, thanks everybody for listening to us. If you're listening to the audio track, you can see us on YouTube. Don't forget you can see us on YouTube now. All 4 of us will be on camera, and everyone have a great night.
Good night.
Later, guys.
Let's go Knicks.
Ew.
Fuck you. We're doing great.
All right, that's a wrap there. Hold on, let me